Alright, so let's take a look at this match between Eddie Cummings and Ruben Alvarez. So I've rolled both of these guys and they're both very good at leg locks. I think Eddie Cummings is probably the best in jiu-jitsu right now at leg locks, or at least one of them. So I'm going to be doing a lot of breakdowns, or I'm just going to cover all the details that I can find in some of these videos and try to show you guys what I think is important and maybe distill it down into a couple of key takeaways at the end. But so let's go ahead and take a look at this match. It's a very short match, but there's a lot of really good details that I think are important to getting the finish here. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, you can tell that they're starting sort of in a neutral position. They're both sort of in an open guard, and they're both trying to attack the legs. So as the match progresses here, Eddie's being very aggressive with attacking Ruben's left leg here. So you can see his hand reaching around Ruben's leg, and what he's trying to do is he's using his leg, his right leg. You see how it's shifting in underneath here to separate Ruben's left leg from his body. All right, so as we progress through the frames here, you can see how, take a look at Eddie's arm here. He's grabbing a hold of the top of Ruben's left leg, and his right hand is grabbing underneath, and you can see how his right leg is sort of shifting underneath. And so what he'll do is he'll use his hip and his leg to try to leverage that knee inside and scrape away his leg to get it separated from his body. And once it's separated from his body and it's not so bent here, it's going to be a lot easier for him to attack it. So let's take a look at that. So as you can see here, he really is driving his right arm in deep, and he's grabbing hold of this Ruben's left leg, and he's going to elevate him now on top of him so he can really offset his base. All right, notice how his right leg here is going to shoot through, and what this is going to do is it's going to give him the ability to use this leg to pull Ruben's left leg around his hip. But one thing I also want to show about this leg drag here that he's doing is the dexterity in Eddie's left foot here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning just so you can see this. I think this is sort of important as well. It's typically speaking, when you go for a leg lock, you want to have both feet pummeled inside, sort of like the double underhooks, right? You can't do, if you're facing each other, you can't do a leg lock with one leg on the outside. Both legs have to at least start on the inside. So you can see at this point here, right now, Eddie's left foot here, as you can see, is not in between Ruben's legs here. All right, this foot has to come out and around and pummel inside to be able to attack Ruben's left leg. So watch the dexterity here. So I'm going to back up a little bit. So as you can see, let's back up here. You can see how Ruben's right leg is on the bottom here. All right, Ruben's right leg's on the bottom, and Eddie brings his left foot out and around, and it's going to shoot underneath. As you can see, his toes coming in here. It's going to shoot underneath and inside so that he can now attack Ruben's left leg. All right, so that's important to note on this particular leg lock entry. All right, so let's keep going here. He's going to use his right knee to separate Ruben from him, using keeping his knee shield up here. Going to drag the left leg away. Now this is a pretty standard position that I find myself in a lot of times, and typically what happens is my opponent gets away. He does it usually one of two ways. He's going to my opponent's going to continue the rotation and either run away, or he's going to continue the rotation and bring his left leg around this way and end up on top. Those are the two ways that my opponent usually gets away, especially when I'm laying flat on the mat. because I don't do any rotation here. So let me just show you what happens in this sequence here. Ruben is going to do his rotation to try to get away, but and instead of laying flat and sort of allowing him to rotate and keeping myself static, what Eddie's going to do here is he's going to take his right leg and shoot it across his hip here, and he's going to be on the small of his back here to make the rotation real easy for him to go. Now, also notice how he's tracking his left leg with his right hook here as well. So he's going to make this rotation look very easy. But in practice, for me at least, I'm a bigger guy. This typically is difficult for me to hit in a live match. It may not be for most people, but at least for me, this is important for me to improve on my game. So he's really got this right leg nice and tight up against Eddie's left hip. Any more rotation and Eddie's just going to easily rotate with it. So watch this. All right, so at this point he's got the rotation, and Eddie's going to be in a bad spot here. And notice how at this point Eddie's going to take his right arm and he's going to go ahead and get really good control over Ruben's left leg here. It's all the way inside before he even lands into a full position. Notice how at this point here Eddie's got his right hand already in a nice leg lock, straight ankle lock position here on Ruben. So it's all about control at this point here. Now Ruben recognizes that he's in danger. He's already grabbed the right hand or the left hand of Eddie to try to prevent him from getting any farther in the hold. And at this point, they both fall over, and they're in this what I call a pretty common leg lock, at least for a straight ankle lock position. There's a Japanese name for it. I don't know the name for it. I'm just going to call it the leg lock position, but I find myself in this position all the time. All right, typically what happens for me is my opponent scrapes the heel off my heel off his hip, and he jumps his hip over my right leg, and the opponent escapes his position, right? Of course, that doesn't happen here. So watch what Eddie does. He's going to take his left leg his right knee, and he's going to raise it up high here, right? While keeping his ankle on Ruben's hip here. And notice how too he's using his toes here as a base on the floor to keep it here long enough so that he can continue his move. Typically speaking, for me, my leg lock game is not very good at the moment, but my heel's a little bit higher. Maybe my foot is off to the side. It's definitely not toes on the mat. So I think that's an important detail that may help individuals keep that heel on the hip so that the opponent doesn't have enough time to scrape it off. All right, so watch what happens here. Watch the knee rise up from Eddie. That's a good, and see how the toes are still on the mat. I believe that's a good way to prevent your opponent from jumping over that leg. See how high this knee is. Now at this point, Ruben knows he's not going to be able to get a good jump over the knee here. I'm not sure what he's going for here, but Ruben looks like he's going for a hold on Eddie's right leg. But notice how Eddie brings his right foot in front, puts it on Ruben's chest right here, and so at that point there's really no hold for Ruben to do. Another detail here that I find myself trying to do is trying to get underneath my opponent's heel, right? So in order to finish the heel hook, I've got to get my right arm underneath the heel in order for me to start twisting on it. And a lot of times what I'll do once I'm in this position is I'll take my head to the mat, I'll arch my back, and then I'll make space with the arch of my back to get my right arm underneath the heel. But that's not what Eddie does in this situation. What he does is he makes a lot of space underneath his hips. See all of this space here, right? Because Eddie's because Ruben's ankle or his left foot is resting on Eddie's right hip, all Eddie has to do is lift up his hip in order for his right hand to shoot underneath. So watch how his hand here is just going to basically shoot underneath, simple as pie. I think that's a great little detail to make the space that you need to get underneath the heel, because that can be challenging at times, especially if your opponent is really trying to prevent you from digging underneath the heel. All right, so again, watch this. He's lifting the hips up and around. Now, a couple of points on the heel hook finish here that I do a little bit differently. And I see how the technique that Eddie is using is far more superior. One thing that he doesn't do is he's not pulling straight on the heel up to his chin. I see a lot of people teaching that in YouTube. He's actually taking his he's putting torque in this direction. Right, so he's catching the heel first and torquing as much as he can this way, and then he rotates around this way. All right, so watch this. So see how he, at this particular point, he's going out and around. He's going this way. Back it up. He's going that way. See that? That's different than what I see most people doing, or at least myself. I would be trying to do this way, taking the heel this way and really trying to capture it underneath my armpit. All right. Now, in this position here, what I typically do is to grab the grip here with both hands. I usually go over my right hand. So if I'm capturing the heel, what I'll do is I'll grab my left hand over the back of my right hand. That's not what Eddie's doing here. He's actually, you see what he's doing here? He's basically clapping his hands together. All right, and that's a different sort of grip than I'm used to, and it looks like it provides a lot more leverage here with the back of the right of the wrist here. It looks like there's a lot more surface area on the back of Ruben's left heel. So I'm going to be trying this in my next sparring session. I'm gonna look to clap my hands for the finish. To get the heel hook finish. Now, typically speaking, I've seen other videos with Eddie on the finish. He's usually bringing his right shoulder towards his hip pocket. He sort of does the old school way here of twisting across the body a little bit, which I know that he typically doesn't do. But I think what's happening here is he's got his right leg so far in front of Ruben that there's no possible way for Ruben to get out of this hold, so he can really take the time to torque. Doesn't necessarily have to worry about Ruben spinning out this way and getting away. So that's pretty much the end of the match here. I think there are a lot of details that I covered, but I think probably the two most important takeaways for me are the actual spinning with my opponent to get a better holding position, and two, I think the ability to stop the heel hook the way that the ability to stop my opponent from escaping by elevating my right knee, it was also a good takeaway for me. So there are a lot of details. Maybe you can remember them all, but I think most people are only going to take a couple away from each of these video breakdowns, and those are the ones that I'm going to work on for my next session. But anyway, hope you liked it, and